If you look at the studies at looking at max fat oxidation, the variability is massive. Some people maximize their fat oxidation at 60% of the heart rate max, other people at 80. So you've got this huge zone where you could be maximizing fat oxidation. So you don't really know what to stick to. If you're not doing much volume over the week, I would say push towards higher intensities. If you're doing huge volumes, definitely lean on the zone 2. Less fatigue. It's so much easier to show up for a cardio workout when you know it's just going to be a nice, easy zone 2.
People really need to customize and personalize their diet, perhaps more so than I appreciated. As long as you're still ticking those big boxes off, so it's low saturated fat, it's high fiber, you're getting a good amount of plant protein, and you're not eating a lot of ultra processed foods, there's room to modify things and see what leaves you feeling best and what works best for your biomarkers. Hey friends, great to be here with you again. In today's conversation, we welcome back exercise physiologist and my good friend, Drew Harrisberg. We chat about Zone 2 training, social media versus evidence-based protocols for high-intensity cardio, and proving again that neither of us take ourselves or life too seriously. There's a bounty of laughs along the way. As mentioned within this episode, the calculations that we discuss for determining your maximum heart rate and training zones are in the show notes, along with Drew's recommended 3-day per week cardio training split for the person that's aiming to improve their cardiorespiratory fitness and lower their risk of chronic disease to live better for longer. With that, please do enjoy. This is me and exercise physiologist Drew Harrisberg. Let's start again, bro. Start again.
Okay.
Let's start again.
We're on. You can't make me laugh. Okay, this is a problem. Wait.
This is it. Dude, if we start laughing now at the beginning, we're not going to get through this.
No, because I'm thinking about our webinar. This is actually a problem.
That study might come up.
Will it? Okay, just don't name him.
I can say it properly.
Okay, what's the name? Okay, let's go. This is going to be the worst podcast ever. Well, okay. I need some coffee.
You know how we're going to start this? Let's do some breath work.
Okay, let's relax.
Yeah.
We have about how many minutes? 5 minutes in. Okay. Anyway, we're back, mate. I'm happy to be back here in person in the studio.
It's been
shit. Let it out. I can't breathe.
It's a combination of the sage and the name.
I know, that's a problem. You can't think about it.
I can't get it out of my head. It's like an obsessive compulsive disorder.
Dude. So I was doing a workout this morning at this endurance event. This guy invited me, and he's a friend who I met at golf. And he said he listened to the webinar or the clip on Instagram. He said he was on the floor laughing. Like it was just, he couldn't stop laughing. And I still watch that sometimes. If I just need to pick me up, I'll just jump on my own page and just watch that clip.
You know the only thing that I regret about that?
Is not laughing harder.
I held it together.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know how you did.
I have no idea how I did, but I've watched it over and over in replay.
Yeah.
And there's no way I can hold it together.
Oh,
I'm in
mate.
hysterics every time.
Same. And
it was an absolute accident. I've had people ask
me.
I
know.
Completely unscripted, unplanned, organic.
And you got the name wrong. That's the funniest part.
It was close.
It was very close. I think you'd heard of Kokkinakis, the tennis player. I reckon that's what it just threw you off a little bit. But anyway, Kokkinos
is the name of the author, and for those that have no idea what we're talking about,
yeah, we should fill them in.
There was a silly mispronunciation of Kokkinos, which occurred during a webinar.
Okay, but don't say it because I'll start laughing.
No, this is a PG program. Is that you or me?
I think that was you.
This is a PG program. The webinar was all adults, and there might be this is a community, family-friendly show.
It is.
There's probably kids listening, and in respect to those families listening, we won't
save the joke.
We won't say exactly what happened, but it was pretty funny.
It was a great laugh. If you want to see the clip, go to my Instagram. You'll find it there.
Do we need a little bit more sage?
No, please stop. I can't breathe already, dude. Please stop.
We just have to cleanse.
You're a madman. I did this workout this morning. My lungs are destroyed. I've got like exercise-induced asthma, and now he's lighting.
Can someone tell us
in the room.
Sage smoke is unhealthy?
Oh my god!
I think it probably is.
It can't be good.
But we haven't been in this recording studio for 6 months?
I actually did the webinar from here.
Yeah, you were here. That's right.
I've been in here.
Well, we haven't recorded together since we were with Alan.
Yeah, mate, I haven't seen you for a long time. You've been traveling the world. You've been recording podcasts all over the place. Lots of good episodes.
Do you want to hear a joke?
Sure, I love a joke. Just don't make me laugh too much because I'm coughing. I don't want to cough this whole podcast.
Okay, so there was a photon traveling through the airport.
It's a bad idea. It's a bad idea.
You brought up travel.
Okay.
So this photon was traveling through the airport, and when you go through the airport, you get to security. And in America, at least, there's like a TSA kind of person working there. Mm-hmm. And this guy at security says to the photon, "Hey, did you bring any luggage? Do you have any bags?" And he looks back at him and he says, "No, I'm traveling light."
Oh my God. It's a clever play on words. I like it. I'm glad it wasn't that funny because I would be coughing my lungs out.
It's a dad joke.
It's a great dad joke.
Yeah.
It's a very Simon Hill joke as well. It's got to have a bit of intellect in there.
Yeah. So you trained today?
Mate, did this amazing group workout endurance challenge, which I don't really ever do these sorts of things. Think about like a CrossFit box vibe, like energy, but it wasn't CrossFit. It was just a gym. But if people want to hear about the workout, I love to share it. It was teams of 3, and it was a race, a competition. You have to run 2 kilometers as a team. It's like a relay. So you run a 500-meter loop, you tag your teammate in, then you do 2 kilometers on the ski erg, 4 kilometers on the assault bike, and then you run again 2K. It was just like all of these different modalities, and then you finish with a 5K row. But because I went out so hard, it was like interval training, my lungs are just destroyed. And I used to get asthma as a kid, and I haven't felt this level of asthma as an adult for a long time, which makes me think I just don't push to those intensities in my general training anymore. Like it was 60 to 70 minutes of just non-stop. So that's why.
What did your Whoop show at the end of that?
It was interesting data, actually. It felt extremely hard. And actually, this is very topical. We'll get into this later because I brought in a study, which was just coincidentally to do with this. My max heart rate was not that high during the workout because the intervals were pretty short and it was 3 people, right? Like a relay. So I'll ski as hard as I can for as long as I want. And then when I feel like I'm ready to tag the next person in, they go in and you just keep going. So it's a...
So the 5 kilometers rowing was combined?
Yeah, you just do your part for the team. How far can you go? How quickly can you do it? You want to do a 20-second sprint, do that. If you want to do a minute, do that. There was no rules. You just strategize however you want. But, the work to rest ratio is pretty interesting because you do your set and then 2 people do theirs and then it comes back to you. So you're resting quite a bit, but it feels extremely hard during the set. Excuse me. And, the data was I was mostly in zone 3. I touched on zone 2 for about zone 4 for 17% of it. I barely hit zone 5. And there was quite a bit in zone 2 when I was resting and recovering between sets when I wasn't doing my set.
Which was a question that I actually asked Inigo.
Right.
Because I wanted to know when can I count the, say, 40 minutes or whatever during my resistance training session that normally is zone 2?
Yes.
And he said, probably not.
Probably not. And now I'm thinking about it. So when I wasn't rowing, right, let's say I did an all-out bout of 500 meters. While I'm resting, I'm in zone 2 for my rest. My heart rate naturally comes down into zone 2. But there's no work being done. Right. There's no power output. It's purely an active rest state.
Yeah, so it's just your heart rate is the same in terms of beats per minute as would occur during zone 2.
Right.
But in one context, you're resting.
Right.
The other, you're on a bike or jogging or whatever.
Right.
So the energy expenditure and what's happening in the cell
yes.
is likely very different.
Exactly. Like if you stepped out onto the street and nearly get hit by a car, adrenaline will kick in, your heart rate will go up to 130. It's not the equivalent of running on a treadmill.
Right, or sitting in the sauna.
Or sitting in a sauna and your heart rate elevates. It doesn't equate to cycling or something, right? Just because your heart rate is a certain number doesn't mean you're burning more calories than in another state. Which I think that was one of the questions, actually, which we just answered off the bat accidentally.
Yeah.
Did you train today? What did you do?
I did zone 2 this morning.
Yeah.
60 minutes.
Just cycling?
Cycling, stationary bike, torque test. I do use heart rate as well.
So you're looking at your Whoop on your phone?
I'm using heart rate from the Whoop, but
Right.
the target heart rate, I actually use the heart rate reserve calculation, the Carvenin formula, and then one of the more specific max heart rate calculations.
Right, I do the exact same.
Right. Yeah, it's the ones that we've discussed. We can put that this maybe into the show notes for people.
Yeah.
But in speaking with Inigo about that, and I think it'll be good for us just to kind of go back over the key takeaways from that episode because it was incredibly informative and detailed.
Yeah.
Great. But there might be some people that I just left thinking, just tell me what to do on a weekly basis. And we did go over that, but it was like 90 minutes in and there was a lot of deep science around it. So maybe we can kind of summarize some of those things. But for me personally, I've also done lactate testing. Right. So I've done lactate testing. I've had a VO2 max test, which gives you a lactate threshold and your different zones. I've used the calculations that you and I have spoken about. And they lined up really well with the VO2 max.
I'm so happy to hear that because sometimes you never know if an individual's theoretical calculation is going to actually match the practical lab setting, and for you it did.
So for me it did, but I think that's Inigo's point.
Yes,
is that what he sees in the lab is that it doesn't always match. So so you can use these sort of online calculators to work out your zone 2, and then when he's looking at people in the lab setting, that isn't actually their zone 2.
Yeah, which makes sense. You're right.
Right.
It's literally like a calculation on paper. It doesn't know the individual, even though the method that we use is more individualized because it takes into account your resting heart rate. That's why I love that. Like, because imagine we both had the exact same max heart rate, not just theoretically using the calculation, but we both had the exact same max heart rate as measured in a VO2 max test, right? But my resting heart rate is 38 and yours is 68. Let's just say your usable beats to get from 68 to max is far less than mine. I've got more usable beats, right? So the relative intensities will be a little bit different, even if we try to follow the zone 2 guidelines, which is a very narrow bracket.
60 to 70% of max heart rate. That's like the kind of crude way of calculating it.
Yeah. And if you look at the studies looking at max fat oxidation, the variability is massive. Some people maximize their fat oxidation at 60% of the heart rate max, other people at 80. So you've got this huge zone where you could be maximizing fat oxidation. So you don't really know what to stick to. That's why in my guidelines in my book that I just put out, the training program, I actually, I don't call it zone 2. I call it moderate intensity continuous training. And my bracket is slightly larger, 60 to 75. Just in case there's those outliers that need to push beyond 70% to still be in zone 2. Because you still want to be working hard. Like, you asked a great question to Inigo. Is it Inigo?
Inigo San Millan.
Inigo. So you asked whether you want to be aiming at the lower end of the target range or the higher end of the target range. Right? Should you be sitting on like 69, 70% of your heart rate max, or is it equivocal to be at 60 or 61%? And I think he did say, like, try to sit at that higher end, right? Which brings into the next point. If you're flirting with that line,
it's very easy to go over it, and particularly as the duration of the session goes on. So I know all the time I sit on a bike and I'm sort of putting out a given amount of watts. I'll be sitting in zone 2 in the upper end of it, but 40, 50 minutes in, I'll start to drift above it. So I have to drop the intensity of my pedaling in order to come back to that zone. I'm still not clear on something though that I asked Inigo, and it has to do with what kind of stress we're trying to induce. So he seemed to kind of underscore the importance of getting max fat oxidation. I asked him a question about whether we're specifically trying to target fat oxidation or we're just trying to target the mitochondria. Because I still, in my mind, if we're trying to really just stress the mitochondria, then to me, it would seem that you would be able to produce more stress by going up into zone 3, 4, 5, still below VO2 max. And even though now you're calling upon more glucose and less fat, so fat oxidation may not be as high in terms of percentage contribution to the ATP that you're generating, you're producing more total ATP at that higher intensity, and it's all aerobic energy production occurring in the mitochondria. So that's still interesting for me to think about.
Yeah, I don't feel like I have a clear answer on that either. I think it was a great question. And then it made me think about, so when you guys were talking about that, what came to mind was when you do like really high intensity interval training, you have that EPOC effect, right? Excess post-oxygen consumption. So in the days or hours after, you're metabolizing the byproducts from that session aerobically. Does that count to mitochondrial function? Even though you've done the hard workout, you've absolutely smashed yourself for 20, 30 minutes, your mitochondria are then metabolizing those substrates aerobically after. Even if the session was, and again, like Rooney didn't like us using this, but like more anaerobic, right? The mitochondria are still working. They're still doing something. And does it count if they do their job after the session? So, I mean, all of these things, to be honest, the deeper you get into it, the more you just think, like, what do I need to know? Like, how does this help me? And I think that sometimes, because we're such science dorks, we like really want to know these answers. But most people listening just want to know, how do I do my zone 2? Why should I do it? Help me to set up a workout.
Yeah, and we know enough to give people information that can dramatically improve their health, even though we may not have the answers to all of the questions to kind of fine tune and say, what's the absolute best protocol? Before we get into some of those practical takeaways, you and I were talking before offline about a sort of study that would be interesting to look at.
Right.
So Inigo kind of made it clear that the surrogate marker for mitochondrial function is lactate. And as you improve mitochondrial function, you have better lactate clearance. And he spoke about looking at people with metabolic syndrome. When you study those people relative to average adults or elite athletes, you see much less or worse lactate clearance. So their lactate is starting to increase at a much lower intensity. Wouldn't it be interesting to have studies that look at different interventions with varying intensities of exercise? So you take a group of people at baseline, all people get their lactate measured to see where their lactate threshold is, and then have some people who are put into a zone 2 intervention. Some people are put into some type of zone 3, 4 intervention. Some are in a zone 5, 4, 5 sort of HIT intervention. Maybe some people are put into a 80% zone 2 with 20% HIT. All of these different ideas and protocols that are out there, and then come back and see which intervention best improved lactate clearance or lactate threshold.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine Inigo would say that like a strictly zone 2 100% of the time, just for the sake of this experiment, would improve their mitochondrial function more than a strictly zone 5 based training program.
And I should have added, all of that would be volume matched.
Right. Okay.
Across those.
And volume, I mean, there's a couple ways to define volume. So how would you match the volumes? Because is it like a time?
Intensity by duration?
Yeah, that's it. It's got to take into account power output, right? Because you can do zone 2. Like, for example, when you do your zone 2, you're sitting on a bike. How many watts are you holding generally? For the first, let's say the first 30 minutes. What's your like comfortable wattage? Do you look at watts?
I think it's in the 130s.
Okay.
Maybe 140.
Yeah, I would have thought for you probably like 140 to 50.
Yeah.
You'd hold that for at least 30 minutes and you'd be comfortably in that zone 2 target heart rate. And you'd pass the talk test, which you spoke to him about, which is basically the ability to have a conversation. It'll be broken sentences, but you can talk. And another thing that I like to do actually is like a nasal breathing test because nasal breathing is a really good intensity regulator, right? So imagine this. You set out to go on a run. I did this the other day. I did Bondi to Bronte and back. I set out on this run and my intensity regulator was just try to nasal breathe the whole time, right? From Bondi to Bronte and back, I will not breathe through my mouth. Because what that does is as soon as you push into a higher zone, like zone 3 and 4, naturally you're going to try to breathe through your mouth. You need to get more oxygen in, right? You just can't breathe fast enough through your nose. But if you just nasal breathe the whole time, it's much easier to stay in that lower moderate zone. So, I mean, that's another thing people can do when they try to use their zone 2 is see if you can do it nasal breathing. Close your mouth the whole time. Use that to regulate your intensity. So let's say you hold 150 watts for 30 minutes and then you're going to do 60 minutes on the bike. If you just held that, the next 30 minutes, your heart rate's going to start to climb. You get this drift, right? So you have to slightly drop your wattage. I mean, obviously elite athletes don't have to, but mere mortals like you and I, we're going to drop our watts a little bit towards the back end of a session, right? So if we're talking about like volume matching, it is quite tricky because it's hard to know exactly how much volume of HIIT you're doing and how it compares to how much volume of zone 2 you're doing. It is hard to do, but in studies they can control for it. But I'm saying the general person doing this kind of training, you're not controlling for this.
Well, you might not even need to control for it. You could do it more of as a kind of free living randomized controlled trial.
Right.
So you get it's outside of a lab, but you get really good generalizability because it's how people would do it. If you just prescribe this to the average person, say off you go do it.
Yeah.
Adherence is going to be a part of that and how well people do it or don't do it. But that's representing what will occur in real life.
Mm. Yeah, like if you said to somebody, one group are going to go hiking or running through a national park at any pace you want. It could be hills, it could be flat, whatever. Excuse me. And then the other group is going to be doing zone 2 strictly on a bike, measuring exactly what their heart rate is, passing the talk test, nasal breathing, RPE of 4 to 5 or whatever it is. Yeah, you're going to see differences. And I wonder how much each one would affect mitochondrial function. But then the other question is, I guess you can answer this. Why should we even care about mitochondrial function? Like, why is this buzzword so important at the moment? Like, a lot of your episode was about improving the function of mitochondria. Why?
I think the assumption is that mitochondrial dysfunction is involved in the development of metabolic conditions. And there are some assumptions there, but certainly Inigo's work has looked at people with metabolic syndrome and they have mitochondrial dysfunction. And he measures that through looking at fat oxidation and looking at lactate as surrogate markers of mitochondrial function. And I mean, there's more research on mitochondrial function. It's considered one of the hallmarks of aging as well. So I think it's part of it, but I also think that we need to not just hyper-focus on zone 2 and mitochondria and forget that there's all of these other adaptations that come with different types of exercise that we need to think about as well.
Yeah.
Heart function, stroke volume, strength. And when 300 minutes came up a week, one of the things, and I didn't mention this within the episode, but I reflected on it, was 300 minutes is quite a lot of zone 2 a week. And I think that's something that's worth consideration at the individual level is if you listen to that episode and then you think, okay, I need to do 300 minutes of zone 2, and that comes at the cost of doing resistance training and some high intensity training. Are you in a better net position, or are you better off doing 150 minutes of zone 2 a week, but then in the other 150 minutes that you have, because people are busy, in the other 150 minutes you're doing a couple of full body resistance training workouts and some HIIT.
Yeah, 300 minutes a week. If all you're doing is zone 2, it is doable. You still have to do 45-ish minutes a day. It's quite a lot, or 90 minutes every other day. But who's, the general person, they want to tick off a few boxes. Resistance training, right? Stimulate the muscles and bones. Zone 2 or some sort of cardio training. It doesn't even have to be zone 2. Let's just call it cardiovascular training or steady state training or interval training, whatever you want to call it. I think that 300 minutes, by the way, the guidelines are 150 to 300.
Sure.
So he's saying that 150 is low and he recommends 300, but the guidelines in Australia anyway are 150 to 300 minutes or 75 minutes to 150 minutes of high intensity training. So
but in that 150 to 300 minutes of moderate intensity exercise, which is in the guidelines, does that also include things like yoga?
No, I think they're talking about steady state aerobic training. So
because I looked it up and I don't believe the wording is moderate intensity cardiovascular training.
Have a quick Google here now, see what it says. From my memory, I read this recently because I put it in my book. I'm pretty sure it's talking about moderate intensity continuous training. And the point about continuous is that it is non-stop, right?
So accumulate 150 to 300 minutes, which is 2.5 to 5 hours of moderate intensity physical activity.
Okay, there we go.
Or 75 to 150 minutes, which is 1.25 hours to 2.5 hours of vigorous intensity physical activity.
Okay.
And then in addition to that physical activity, it says do muscle strengthening activities
it's very
on at
vague.
least 2 days each week. So I remember looking this back up and thinking, okay, when they say moderate intensity physical activity, are they talking specifically to what the literature would describe as moderate intensity cardiovascular training?
Well, now I think no.
Which is what Inigo's talking about.
Right.
Or are they just saying anything that's kind of moderate intensity, whether it's yoga or hiking or sitting on a bike, swimming, all these things, they all count to that 150.
I would say that is the answer. Now that I think about it, because these guidelines are for broad public health messaging, okay? For the general population, how many minutes of activity should you do per week and what should your heart rate roughly be? That's what this is saying. So this is saying the modality could be yoga, it could be jogging, it could be playing sport, it could be tennis. It doesn't matter what it is. 150 to 300 minutes a week. They're just trying to get you on your feet with your heart rate above rest in a moderate zone for that amount of time. Right? So I was wrong. I thought it was continuous training, but it's not. It's going to be physical activity. It could be anything.
Which means you'll get there if you do 25 to 30 minutes a day.
Right.
Of anything that's considered moderate intensity.
Sure.
How would you define that? They don't specifically define that, but that's probably comes back to 60 to 75% of max heart rate.
Right. And you could do it by doing yoga in the morning for 40 minutes and then lift weights the next day. And then the next day you walk your dog for an hour. This all adds up. It all counts. And I think that, again, the point is to prevent people becoming sedentary. So these guidelines are a little bit different to your conversation with Inigo. And this is another thing I was thinking about with your episode with him. He mentioned an 80-20 rule. Right, 80% of your training in zone 2, 20% in the higher zone 4 and 5. That breakdown makes all the sense in the world if you're an elite athlete doing huge volumes of cardio. Right? Because imagine you're doing, like he said, some of his athletes are doing, I can't remember the number he said, but it was wild how many hours per week they were doing on the bike. Huge amounts. If you're doing zone 4 and 5 for even more than 50% of the time, you are going to get so fatigued, you're going to be absolutely exhausted. So if you're an elite athlete, of course, do 80% in zone 2. But if you're a general person in the population who's just trying to be healthy and you're not moving that much per week, let's say you're only hitting 150 or not even, and you decide to make 80% of that zone 2, I would say you're not squeezing the sponge dry. You're
so as you
out.
have less time available, that
intensity ratio will go up.
That percentage needs to become more equal.
I think so. I think the intensity requirement goes up if you have less time, for sure. So let's say, okay, here's an example. Let's say you can only do 20 minutes of cardio 3 times per week for whatever reason. Your life doesn't allow you to do any more. You're going to do 3 workouts a week for 20 minutes. Who's going to get fitter, faster, and who's going to burn more calories? Not the calories is the goal, it's a byproduct. Who is going to get more bang for buck? Let's just put it that way.
The person who splits that so that's 1 hour a week
an hour a week, 20 minutes, 3 sessions a week.
So one person let's say,
only
do
does
eight-
zone 2, brisk walks, simple cycling, but they do their 20 minutes of cardio and then that's it. That's done. They do that 3 times a week. The other person, for that same 20 minutes, does HIIT training. They go hard. They really, really push their heart rate nice and high. Bang for buck, who do you think is going to get
HIIT
better?
training every day of the week.
Right. So this is where the conversation gets a bit muddy. Context matters. If you're not doing much volume over the week anyway, I would say push towards higher intensities. Really squeeze the sponge dry. If you're doing huge volumes, definitely lean on the zone 2. Less fatigue. It's mentally, it's so much easier to show up for a cardio workout when you know it's just going to be a nice, easy zone 2. Right? Like the mental fatigue that comes with doing too much HIIT or too much strength training, it's kind of draining. But sometimes, my whoop will tell me that I'm a bit under-recovered. I've slept terribly. My recovery sucks. HRV's down. Resting heart rate's gone up a bit. That day, I'm going to swap my really intense HIIT workout for something just like a zone 2. 60 minutes on the bike, listen to a podcast, listen to some music. It's almost like an active recovery day, but you're still getting great benefits. Getting those mitochondrial benefits and all the stuff that you guys spoke about. So
What do you think is the minimum amount of time someone should spend per week in zone 4 or 5?
Minimum? I think you can go pretty low with this if you truly get into zone 4 and 5. And this is the thing. I think that a lot of people think they're in zone 4 and 5 and aren't getting close. And the reason I say that is because I brought in a study that I want to talk about later. Looking at this exact question is like basically when you think you're getting a great workout, your perception of the workout is that was extremely hard. I'm very puffy. I can't talk at all. This is extremely difficult. And then they look at the heart rate and it's not quite what you think. And even today, I did this workout that I was like on the floor. At one point, I was like lightheaded. I barely touched zone 5, right? But
So
I didn't answer your question at all. But the minimum intensity, I would say, so the minimum time, are you saying, in zone 5 or percentage of your workouts?
minimum time if someone is going to invest into quote unquote high intensity interval training, and I'll get you to define that. I know you've done it before, because there's a lot of different ideas about what that means, right? And you see stuff on social media or in gyms that might be a little different to the literature. But if we're talking about pure HIIT training, how many minutes would I need to do in a week to get some type of positive adaptation?
Well, I mean, there are studies showing that you can get benefits from just a 4-minute interval if you do get your heart rate to what the criteria say is qualified as HIIT, which is
85.
Yeah, it's about 85% of your max heart rate. Some people think over 90, but most of the literature has it at 85%. You can do that by just putting on a 4-minute interval at the end of your zone 2. And if you're doing that a couple times a week, I reckon in 12 to 16 minutes, you can get a lot of benefit.
So 4-minute interval.
A hard 4-minute interval. It sounds long, I know.
Does the person need to be at 85% of max heart rate or higher for the entire 4 minutes?
Ideally, your time in that range will be close to 100%. That's the ideal. The problem is it takes people a while to get into...
So you need a ramp then. Right.
So should we go through the study quickly? Because it's so topical. This is literally what the study was looking at.
Yeah, where I'm trying to go here is I want people to understand across a week. I assume that many people listening are probably quite time poor. And if they're going to implement HIIT training, so a zone 4 or 5 session, and they're going to have zone 2, and let's say that they have 3 hours a week combined to do zone 2 and zone 5.
Yep.
I want to help them understand what that looks like in terms of a split, how they know if they're in zone 2 and zone 5, and what a zone 2 and a zone 5 workout actually looks like in terms of how you program that or structure it.
Yeah. So I like the idea. I mean, this is what I did in my cardio program that I just released. And the reason I did this is because I think it provides variety. I think it's fun. I think you don't feel like you're too repetitive. Right? So I've got 3 cardio workouts a week. The first one is a zone 2 workout for the vast majority of the time. And right on the end of it, we tag on a 4-minute HIIT finisher. And this finisher ideally will be 4 minutes of all-out effort. But the way I structured it in the program is that it's 4 minutes, but using intervals. For example, it might be 45 seconds all out with a 15-second active rest. So you're not just sitting there in your rest, you're still pedaling at a low intensity. And you might repeat that for 4 minutes, right? So it's an interval style workout that goes for about 4 minutes at the end of your zone 2. That's one style that I've put out. The next one is a 3-4 workout. So zone 3 and 4 cardio up to, I progress it over the weeks, but roughly, let's say 45 minutes to up to 60 minutes. Okay. And in this workout, I don't actually care really what you focus on, how long you're in 3 and 4, or do you touch on 5? I don't really care. It's just more of a not so strict, go at your own pace, have a bit of fun with it, but try to stick in that 3 to 4. And then another workout, the third cardio of the week, is strictly we'll call it zone 5 or high intensity. So this is like an evidence-based protocol, which the most popular one that's been studied is a 4x4 protocol. So it's 4 minutes of work, 3 minutes of active rest, repeat 4 times. Now that one I think is the best. If you really care about improving your VO2 and getting your cardiorespiratory fitness up quick, I like the idea of having a workout dedicated to that. You're going to show up to the gym, you're going to smash it out for 28, 30 minutes, and it's done.
So 4 minutes work, and this can be done on a rowing machine.
Yep, rowing machine.
Stationary bike.
Yep.
Are they the best 2 modalities for this?
I like the ones that include your upper body. So you could do it on an assault bike even if you wanted.
4 minutes on an assault bike?
I know, it's painful. It's a scary thought. But I personally do it on a rowing machine.
That's enough to make you vomit.
I know, the thought can make you vomit. The assault bike's horrible. I did it today.
And if someone has never done this before, do they start with a 4-minute interval?
Well, the thing so when you characterize the heart rate response to this exact protocol, so there's a great study looking at this exact thing. It shows that the first interval, right, so the first 4-minute block that you do, takes the longest for you to get to above 85%. So the first 2 minutes almost, you're just slowly ramping up to 85. Even though you're trying your hardest, the heart rate doesn't just respond like that. It takes time to get there. So for 2 minutes, you're trying to get there. Then you get into that above 85. You might hold that till the end of your 4 minutes. Then you begin your active rest. Drop the intensity down, the cadence down. You're cruising for 3 minutes, right? Let's say at 50% of your max.
Have you ever done that on an assault bike?
It.
On an assault bike?
No, not an assault. I haven't. If any psychos out there want to try it, let me know.
Yeah.
But
if someone hasn't ever done this, I'm not sure starting on the assault bike is probably...
No, don't. Start on a stationary bike. If you have good rowing form and you know how to row, jump on a rowing machine. It's amazing. Yeah. You're just stimulating so much muscle. You get your heart rate up really quick. You could do it even on a ski erg, but I recommend a rowing machine.
I love the rowing machine as well.
Love it as well.
I if I'm doing this even after zone 2 and I do zone 2 on a stationary bike,
you'll swap over.
I swap over.
I know.
I just find it easier on the rowing machine.
And you can just sort of crank it out. It's actually a good muscular workout.
When I say easier, I mean easier to get my heart rate into the right range.
Right. Yeah, so it takes a couple of minutes to get into the range. Then in the recovery, so this is what's interesting as well. And I actually think I want to design a study. If I could design a study, this is what I would do. What the studies currently do is they do the 4-minute hard, 3-minute active recovery, repeat 4 times. In that 3-minute active rest, the fitter individuals, their heart rate gets lower, right? Quicker. So they get closer to rest in those 3 minutes than somebody who's very unfit.
They recover quickly.
They recover very quickly. That means for them to ramp back up into zone 4-5, they got to build it up from that lower recovery point, right? But less fit people, this is what's counterintuitive. Less fit people have an easier time getting back up to that 85% for the work interval because their heart rate doesn't drop as low in the rest.
So if you're super fit then, you might want to reduce your rest time.
There we go, sir. This is the study I wanted to design. So I would like to see a 4x4 protocol, but instead of 3-minute rest for very fit people, maybe they have 2 minutes rest, right? So, or perhaps the study would set a target heart rate. So the study would look like either you do 3 minutes of active rest, or when your heart rate reaches, say, a certain number, which is going to be decided through calculations, then it's time to go again.
Or it drops a certain percent.
Correct, exactly. So that's what I would like to see. But then when you look at the studies again, interval 2, 3, and 4, it becomes much quicker to get into that above 85. So the first one might take 2 minutes. Then when you go into interval 2, that second block, you'll get there a bit quicker. Interval 3, even quicker. And interval 4, you're almost, straight away. So not all of these intervals are going to look the same, right? You have to understand that commit to the whole protocol because the real juice is in 3 and 4 when you can spend a lot of time in that above 85% heart rate.
This episode is proudly brought to you by Inside Tracker. Track your blood biomarkers, understand your biological age, and receive personalized lifestyle tips backed by evidence to optimize your health. To get started with Inside Tracker today and get 20% off your first purchase, head to insidetracker.com/Simon. That's insidetracker.com/Simon for 20% off. Okay, so just to recap there, in terms of minimum effective volume, was it just one interval? So one 4-minute interval
on the end of your zone 2.
That is a minimum volume.
I think that's a minimum effective dose.
Right. And so if someone's listening and thinking, I've never ever done this, I've never done HIIT, we've said heart rate should be 85% or higher, max heart rate. Is there an easier way of just knowing, someone understanding if they're working out at
the
high enough intensity in terms of how should they feel while they're doing this?
Okay, so I'm going to bring up a study to answer this question. Full of studies today, man. I got studies in my back pocket here. So this study here was looking at
did that kettle just make a noise?
It's telling you to drink it. So this study here, I'll read you the title of it. Evidence-based versus social media-based high-intensity interval training protocols, physiological and perceptual responses. Okay, so this study is looking at the protocol that I just mentioned, a 4x4, right? That would be an evidence-based protocol. This one's not looking at a 4x4. This one's looking at 60 seconds on, 60 seconds off of cycling, right? So in the 60 on, again, your target, you're trying to get to above 85, then you have your 60 seconds off. They also had an evidence-based protocol that was using body weight. So it's the exact same protocol, 60 on, 60 off for 10 repeats. But instead of doing cycling, you're doing burpees, star jumps, like all that sort of stuff. Those are considered the evidence-based protocols. And then the social media-based protocols were a Tabata. Do you know what Tabata is? So 20 on, 10 off. And they did it for 20 repeats. So 20 on, 10 off, 20 times.
Why is that considered social media? Has that never been studied?
This is the thing. So this particular study picked the most popular social media protocols on YouTube based on views. So I think it had like 25 million views. They chose that as something that clearly the population like doing it. It's got a lot of views. It's very popular. A lot of people just want to do what their favorite fitness influencer tells them, right? So you'll often see on social media people saying, try my HIIT circuit, guaranteed to get your heart rate up, blah, 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 right? Which is probably true. But the question that they're trying to answer is this style of training that's promoted by social media, quote unquote, experts equivalent to the physiological responses and the perceived responses that you get from a real evidence-based protocol that we know improves VO2 max? So they looked at the social media protocol was a body weight Tabata, so push-ups for 20 seconds, rest for 10, squat jumps for 20 seconds, rest for 10, etc. And then another one which was 40 on, 20 off for 15 intervals. Okay? And then they look at the results. So everyone's doing these, I think it was a crossover design, so I'm pretty sure they did all the
And what are they measuring?
So they're measuring heart rate per session, average heart rate per session, peak heart rate per session. They're measuring, I think actually the outcomes that they measure, this one was mostly related to, are they in the heart rate zones that you would expect from HIIT training, which is 85%, that threshold, right? It's very important to get there. They measured lactate and a couple of other things as well, because they think lactate is the accumulation of lactate during HIIT is it stimulates mitochondrial adaptation. So you actually do want to get your lactate nice and high during these sessions to get a response. So I'll tell you what some of the results were here. Peak heart rate, so the max heart rate that they reached per session was pretty similar between all the groups. Okay, but that's not what we really care about here, because you can hit your peak heart rate for 2 seconds and it goes down. That doesn't tell you anything. What we want to know is time in range. So how long, what percentage of your interval are you in the range of above 85? Body weight 60-60, so 60 seconds of, whatever the body weight exercise is with 60 seconds rest, that ranked the highest for time in range, 94%. So 94% of the time, they were above 85% of the max heart rate, which is really good. The lowest, what do you think the lowest would be? Who ranked the lowest? Sorry, what protocol ranked the lowest, do you think? Based on, you can get this wrong, it's okay, mate.
What were the options again?
So we've got the evidence-based protocol, which is 60 on, 60 off times 10. One of them was cycling and one of them was body weight. So 2 protocols. Social media was body weight only. There was no cycling. It was body weight. Tabata, 20 on, 10 off for 20. Or 40 seconds on, 20 seconds off for 15 intervals. I'd like to see where your mind goes with this.
I don't think it's Tabata.
As in, what do you mean? You don't think Tabata
was the lowest in range?
Okay, why? This is an interrogation.
Because was it 20 on, 10 off?
20 seconds on, 10 seconds off.
I could be wrong. It might not be long enough on to get to the target.
Correct. Ding, ding, ding.
I think I just proved myself wrong there.
But you fixed it. I didn't even tell you. You got to it. So Tabata ranked the lowest for time in range. And it was like less than 74% of the time.
So the moral of the story there being the duration is going to be important.
The duration of the interval is absolutely key to get your heart rate into the target zone. So going back to what you were just saying, how does somebody know, right, if they're in the right zone without measuring their heart rate? This study kind of showed that even though they thought they were getting an excellent workout because they checked for like perceived enjoyment, how hard it was, all these things, they said, this is great. Like, there was a great workout. It was very hard, blah, blah, blah. But really, when you look at their heart rate, they never got to the same heart rates as the evidence-based protocols. So it's not enough to think you trained really hard. And literally the same thing happened to me this morning at this endurance event. I thought it was such a hard workout. I was ready to see how much percentage was in zone 5, and it was like less than 1%. So it's not enough to be breathing heavy and hurting. You've got to have some objective feedback.
So you need to really look at your heart rate.
I think you need to measure your heart rate.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then let's break this down for people, and this is also going to help with the zone 2 calculations. How does someone calculate their max heart rate? We've spoken about this a little bit before, and we've spoken a lot offline. 220 minus age is the common calculation that everyone's heard, but there are better calculations. So how would you like people to kind of navigate that space to step 1, the listener right now, calculate their max heart rate, short of not having a wearable that's telling them what their max heart rate is?
Right. By the way, I think the wearables use an equation that is the simple one. I'm pretty sure most wearables would just use 220 minus your age, because when you start your profile, you tell them your age, they just do a quick calculation. There are so many calculations out there to calculate max heart rate. The one that I have been leaning on, I can't remember the exact numbers here, it's a bit numbery.
We can put the exact calculations in
because there's dozens, but it's something like, do you remember?
Well, there was a one for females and one for males.
Right, there's also gender-specific ones.
Gulati was the female one.
Right. The Carbonan method is for heart rate reserve, which we spoke about. That takes into account your resting heart rate.
So either way, there's going to be, in the show notes, there'll be a calculation for male and for female.
I think wasn't it like 208 minus 0.7 times age or something like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then 211.
Right. And there was a 209. Like they're all close. At the end of the day, no matter which one you use, they're going to be pretty much 1 or 2 or 3 beats off what you probably are. And again, just remember, this is a calculation. This calculator does not know your actual physical ability or your fitness or how your heart is developed, and it doesn't know. So it might spit out 185 as your max heart rate. You might then jump on a VO2 test and it shows you that it's like 200 beats per minute. So it doesn't know. It's a ballpark, which again, I'm in support of what Inigo was saying, is heart rate alone is not good enough as a measure for the intensity of your workouts because of this exact thing. There's variation between individuals. The calculations for max could be a little bit off. Anyway, theoretically, you're going to calculate your max heart rate using one of these calculations.
And all you need to know for that is your age and your sex.
That's it. Correct. You're going to use that if you want to keep this really simple. You're going to keep your heart rate between about 60 to 70. We'll say 60 to 70 because that's like the popularized version of zone 2. 60 to 70% of that number, your max heart rate, is your target zone. So you're going to jump on the bike, start pedaling. It'll take a few minutes to get into zone 2. I don't know if you've checked this for yourself. It's really interesting. Sometimes it takes me like 10, 15 minutes to get into to the like perfect zone 2. Spend your workout in zone 2, meaning in that heart rate range, and cross-check with a few other variables, right? So you're going to see, do you pass a talk test? If there was a mate next to you on a bike or if you're on the phone, could you have a conversation? Sure, you're going to be a bit puffy, but you should be able to talk, right? In comparison, if you're doing a zone 5 HIIT workout, you'll barely be able to say a word, right? You're really exhausted. If you can try the nasal breathing, I recommend that because that'll regulate your intensity naturally. As soon as or even do this test, this is interesting. Push to zone, so sit in zone 2, nasal breathe, and then crank up either your reps per minute, how quickly you're pedaling, your cadence, or crank up the resistance a little bit. So your RPM might drop, but the resistance is up.
We're
so
talking about a bike here, a stationary bike.
I'm talking about a stationary bike. And then go hard and see your heart rate go into zone 3 and 4, and you won't be able to nasal breathe. You literally will almost pass out. You'll have to open your mouth and start taking in big breaths. So I think just let's keep it simple. Have a target heart rate, know how to do the talk test and all these things.
And then the same, so that was zone 2, which was calculate your max heart rate using those calculations we'll put in the show notes. You multiply that max heart rate by 0.6 and also by 0.7.
Yep.
That'll give you your lower bound and your upper bound for your zone 2. Yep. It'll give you a range. Like it might spit out 110 to 122. Right. That's your zone 2 target range.
Yep.
Now you can track your heart rate with your wearable while you're riding. Do the talk test. Yep. Can you breathe through your nose? Can you are you a little bit puffy, a little bit sweaty?
Yep. That's
enough for most people. And then the next step for them is to think about the duration in that session and across an entire week.
Right.
And what does that look like? We come back to that.
Right.
For zone 5, you also take that max heart rate.
Yep.
But instead of multiplying it by the 0.6 and 0.7, which gave you your zone 2 target range, we're multiplying by...
I like 0.85.
Okay, so you take that max heart rate, you multiply by 0.85, and that's where you want your heart rate to be above that.
In your working sets.
During those 4-minute intervals.
Yes. Or if you're doing the 60 on, 60 off version that we just explained, during that 60 seconds, try get it above. And the reason why it works for a 60-second interval and it works for a 4-minute interval is because of the work to rest ratio. It's all about that ratio. This is a 1-to-1 ratio. So in the 60 seconds off, let's say you get your heart rate to 90% in that hard working set. It's not going to drop that low in 60 seconds off, right? It's not long enough to really recover and get it close to rest, right?
Your intensity is going to be higher in that 60 on, 60 off than a 4-minute interval.
Yeah, because you don't have to really ramp up into it. After 3 minutes of active rest, if you're fit, you're ready to go. Like it's almost like I did this on the rowing machine. And at 2 minutes, I was like, I feel ready. I'm going to check the clock. And I was like, I've got another minute of rest. And I was like, this doesn't feel right. I feel like I'm ready right now. So yeah, I think that I reckon this protocol would feel harder just because the rest is shorter, for sure.
But back to the minimum effective volume. So I think earlier you said, even if you can get some positive adaptations if you do a 4-minute high intensity interval session once a week.
Yeah.
That's 4 minutes consecutively. What if I choose the 60 second on, 60 off? If I repeat that 4 times, so I have 4 minutes of total work, is that equivalent to doing a 4-minute interval?
I think, if your time in range is above 85 and it's equivalent, I think it would be. But I don't know the answer to what the minimum effective dose is for this sort of training, to be honest. I don't know. I think 4 minutes would be enough to get some adaptation. What's optimal? I don't know.
I remember seeing one study, and we can dig it up. Yeah. I think it was people with metabolic syndrome, and it compared 1 4-minute interval versus 3 or 4. And most of the benefit was from just doing the one.
That's right.
But there was some extra benefit.
Of course.
But it was diminishing returns.
Exactly right. That's why I'm saying the optimal dose, I'm not sure what the answer is. But I do know that if you just did one HIIT work, like an evidence-based protocol per week, which they roughly last 20 minutes on average, 20 to 30 minutes. If you do that once a week and you truly do it properly, I think that's enough. I don't think you need to be doing it every day. Certainly not.
So if I just want to start off with 4 minutes a week, and I choose either the 4 minute consecutive protocol or the 60 on, 60 off, and I walk into the gym, and I'm going to do this on a rowing machine. You said then it takes about 20 minutes. Now, I know the answer to this question, but I think we need to spell this out.
Yeah.
I'm not going to walk in there and just go straight into the 4 minute interval.
No, you're definitely not. You're gonna do a warm up, ideally on the machine that you intend to do the workout on.
So what does that look like?
So what I like to do, I have what I call a ramp protocol. I put this in my book, in the training program. And this ramp protocol I use for before weights training, and I use it before cardio training if it's high intensity training. I don't do a ramp protocol for the zone 2 because zone 2 is the intensity of your warm up essentially, right? So the warm up should be in basically zone 2. Okay, so what I would do is jump on a rowing machine for 4 to 5 minutes at a really nice zone 1-2 pace. Start in zone 1, ease your way into zone 2. Try to spend about 4 or 5 minutes in zone 2 on a machine. You just want to feel puffy, a little bit sweaty, and warm, right? Just build that sweat and feel like your body temperature is actually increased. Then I like to get off and do a little bit of mobility and stretching, right? So I'll do some like active and dynamic stuff just to get the muscles moving, and then get back on the machine, and you're going to do quite a hard set of only like 10 or 15 strokes at say 60% of your max. Then you're going to do another set at about 70%, then 80%. Then when you feel primed, start your workout. That's when you're going to do that 4 minute interval and going nice and hard. But yeah, you're not going to just show up to the gym, jump on a machine and start sprinting.
And if you have just finished your zone 2, you've done an hour of zone 2, can you go straight into the HIIT?
Like if they're doing what you're doing, where you'll do zone 2 on a bike and then jump on a rowing machine, I would still prime your body for the rowing.
Ramp up a little bit.
Ramp a little bit. Do 20 seconds or 15 seconds quite hard. Then do another 15 seconds a little bit harder and just ramp your way up to the intensity that you think you're going to be pulling for 4 minutes or whatever the interval is that you're doing.
Okay, so let's try and wrap all of this up. I'm conscious of trying to give people some takeaways they can grab a hold of.
Yeah, like real practical takeaways.
Right. The last episode was very in-depth science. I'm not sure whether we've added a lot of clarity yet. Hopefully we have.
I think we have.
Hopefully we have.
Yeah.
I just don't want to leave people more confused than before they turn this episode on.
Yeah, fair
so the main points here that we're making is that you can be very intentional with the cardiovascular training that you're doing.
Yes.
And understanding your max heart rate to begin with is a good starting point. You can use that to then understand what is your zone 2, what is your zone 5. When you're in zone 2, you're not just going to be relying on heart rate. You're also relying on some of these other cues. Mm-hmm. Can you talk? Are you a bit puffy? Can you breathe through your nose? All that sort of stuff. Someone has, let's say, how much time do you think the average person has a week to dedicate to cardiovascular training?
Just to cardiovascular? Again, it comes down to personal goals. Like some people, their goal is get stronger or get bigger, right? Hypertrophy. Some people don't care about cardio. In fact, there's this like...
I'm thinking about the person who is interested in their health span optimization and longevity.
Yeah.
That's who I'm thinking about right here.
Yeah.
And let's say they have 5 hours a week and half of that or 2.5 hours of that is resistance training.
Yeah.
So they have 2.5 hours to do cardiovascular exercise.
Yeah.
Are they doing 80% of that in zone 2? Is that where we're sort of guiding them at the moment?
Well, this is a good example because what you just said there is basically 150 minutes for zone 2, for cardiovascular training and 150 minutes for resistance training. I think that's a great way to do it. I think that's a nice split. It's balanced. You're going to get the best of both worlds. I don't think you have to spend 80% in zone 2, to be honest. if in that example. If you're only dealing with 150 minutes per week, I don't think it should all, or at least the vast majority should be in zone 2. I just don't think that makes all that sense. I think the way that I explained it before actually is a better way. It's that you have a dedicated workout for zone 2. You have a dedicated workout for sort of 3 and 4 and a dedicated workout for zone 5. I like that. But at the end of the day, again, we're getting into the weeds. If you just have 20 to 30 minutes a day that you think you can do some cardio, I really think that the most important thing is that you just do it. And I don't think that it really matters as to what zone you're in and what percentage, because you're going to get amazing benefits. This is, I think, where the conversation with Inigo got a little bit complicated, is you're always going to get benefits from all kinds of training. Some of them are more unique than others, but generally speaking, all of this cardio is going to improve your VO2 max. HIIT is a more time efficient way to do it and will improve your cardiorespiratory fitness more when you compare HIIT to moderate intensity, but it doesn't mean you don't get benefits from moderate intensity, right? And yes, when you do moderate intensity, you may improve mitochondrial function more than if you only did very high intensity, but you're still getting benefit from the high intensity. Mm-hmm. So it's not black and white. It's not an on-off switch.
But if the more strapped you are for time,
yeah,
then the more you may want to lean into the higher intensities.
Yeah, if you only have some people do their cardio on the day that they're at the gym doing resistance training. If you're somebody who does that, you're not going to do 60 minutes of zone 2 and then 45 minutes of weights, right? So what could you do? Do your weights for 30 minutes and then do 15 to 20 minutes of HIIT. Like really go hard, because then you're making the most of that hour. You're definitely going to get the best of all worlds if you can do that.
That's where HIIT training is very appealing to people from an ROI in terms of time invested.
Yeah, and studies look at this. They look at exactly this. So they look at moderate intensity continuous training. What is the impact on VO2 max? And they look at HIIT training, the impact on VO2 max, and it's more time efficient. You can achieve a VO2 in less time. And it's something like an average of have you seen these studies? Like 9.7 minutes per session less to reach an equivalent VO2 max improvement. So if you're time strapped, HIIT training is a great way to get a great workout. I think the part of the conversation that I found really fascinating with Inigo was where you were talking about fat burning, or the fat burning zone, and more glycolytic training that uses glucose and less fat, and whether or not that has an impact on fat loss outcomes long term. So that question, Inigo answered in a certain way, which he said, I don't want to put words in his mouth here, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure he said that in his opinion, utilizing more fat during your workout, which occurs in zone 2, you burn more fat as a fuel predominantly, would be better for fat burning and fat loss long term. Okay. So I looked at a few studies. I wanted to know the answer to this. And I looked at two things: fasted versus fed cardio, which is a really good way to manipulate what fuels are being used during your workouts. So the research in this fasted versus fed cardio is pretty clear. Most studies are showing almost the exact same thing, which is that when you do fasted cardio, so imagine first thing in the morning, you've had absolutely nothing, no coffee, just maybe some water. You jump on a bike and you do either a zone 2 workout or even just a mixed workout, okay? Do you burn more fat during that workout? And the answer is yes. You actually do preferentially burn fat as a fuel, right? The relative contribution of energy comes mostly from fat, right?
But you're not necessarily burning or utilizing more total energy.
Exactly. So this is what the studies show, right? So the answer is yes, you do burn fat, so your body will lean more on fat as a fuel for that workout, compared to in a fed state where you're burning more glucose than fat.
It's just different substrate. But it's not changing the energy equation or energy balance.
Right, exactly. And beyond that, when you look at the core, so in that workout, which is a snapshot of this, this very quick snapshot of your day, yeah, fasted training, you burn more fat. Fed training, you burn more glucose. But over 12 to 24 hours, when they measure respiratory quotient, or RER, respiratory exchange ratio, which is like a ratio of CO2 to O2, but it doesn't matter. The point is that number tells you what fuel you're burning. The group that did fasted training, their RER showed that they were burning more fat during the workout. But later in the day, it switched over to glucose. So they burn less fat later in the day. Whilst the fed group, the RER shows that they burn more glucose in that workout, but later in the day, they switch over and burn more fat. And the net effect is there's no difference. So it comes down to personal preference. Like, what do you like to do?
Right. We're talking about body weight here.
Yeah, like fat loss outcomes. Right.
Fat mass. Yeah.
Right. But, well, this is actually just looking at fat oxidation over the day. This study. So RER is telling you what fuel are you burning at rest, what fuel are you burning in a workout. The point of this study was that it didn't actually matter if you were burning more fat during a fasted workout, because later in the day you burn less and you burn more glucose. So it balances out anyway. So personal preference, what do you want to do? How do you want to do your training? Do you like to train fasted? Great, do that. If you want to train fed, that's fine too. It doesn't matter that you burn less fat during a fed workout, because later in the day you'll burn more fat then. And it's like you say, it's energy balance.
This brings up another question.
Yeah.
And I know we don't have the answer to this, and I brought it up before. But Inigo seems to think that stressing the mitochondria, or this point of maximum fat oxidation, is really the crucial thing. And that's why zone 2 training is beneficial. If that's the case, and fat oxidation is higher when you're training in a fasted state, logic says if we're trying to stress the mitochondria and fat oxidation specifically, then doing zone 2 training in a fasted state would be preferential over a fed state.
Yeah, that does make sense. I can't lean on study for this one, but
do you know? Does that make
yes
sense? What I'm saying there?
Yes, that for me that does make sense. But I think this is the part of the conversation where we need to explain the difference between the fat that you utilize in a workout and actual fat loss outcomes long term. So I believe that he's saying he's not talking about fat loss outcomes. He's talking about performance and mitochondrial function, right? So if you're just thinking about how the mitochondria function and you care about metabolic health, then it kind of does make sense, right? To do a zone 2 workout in a fasted state that leans more on fat oxidation.
But that could be tested again.
Could definitely
have
be tested.
Protocols, fed and fasted zone 2 training. Which protocol works better to improve lactate clearance?
Bang. I bet you that study exists. Let's look for it after this.
If it doesn't, Inigo, that's one that
let's fund that.
You need to get funding for.
Yeah, I agree. That's very interesting. But I still don't think that would impact fat loss outcomes long term.
Even if there's not a study for that, I bet you the endurance community has worked it out.
Yeah, exactly.
They've tested it.
Yeah, definitely. You're gonna hear anecdotes. You're gonna hear people who have done this themselves. So much interesting hypotheses come from.
Isn't that why it's train low and race high?
It is to essentially build that metabolic machinery that can burn fat efficiently, and then when you get into your race day, you've got carbs on board, fast acting fuel, and you've built an aerobic base prior. Has that been proven? I'm not sure either. Train low, race high. But again, feet on the ground, people living in the world try these things, and a lot of people say that it does make a big difference.
Do you know what we need to do?
Long-term randomized control crossovers,
No,
right?
We need to have the ultimate deep dive with Inigo and Kieran Rooney.
In one room.
The
roof will blow off, mate. The roof will blow off. Oh, it'll be great.
We'll need, some serious translation.
I reckon we could do that. Yeah, it's another language. That biochemistry language, next level. All right, I can facilitate that. Let me call Rooney after this.
Yeah,
You call
I'll
Inigo.
get on to Inigo and
All
we'll
right.
see if we can get the four of us together and workshop some of these things.
It'll be hilarious. No one will listen, but we'll love it.
Not that this matters at all
No.
to the average person.
It doesn't.
Who, they're anything but average. I'm not saying that in a kind of negative way. I'm speaking about myself as well here, in terms of what we do when we show up at the gym, or we decide to go for a jog or whatever it is. These are kind of interesting questions to explore.
Right.
But we can really shift the needle a lot without, studies going into this level of detail.
Right. And again, we need to keep nailing what is the goal of the person. If it's a body weight fat loss goal, a lot of this stuff doesn't matter. But if it is a longevity goal, And if it's about metabolic health and disease prevention and, things that are independent of this weight conversation or body weight conversation, then I think this stuff is actually really important. Because if there is something to focusing a lot of time in zone 2 and actually targeting your mitochondria and improving the function of them and the health of them and improving your metabolic health, then this is important. But for most people, it's just, what should I do? How do I maintain a healthy body weight? How do I be generally fit? I think this is getting very granular, for most people. I know even for me sometimes, like, I love this stuff and I love to think about it and learn about it. And then sometimes like, are we just overdoing this? Like, do we really need to be thinking about how much fat we're oxidizing and what the mitochondria are doing? Like, sometimes I just think we get distracted by these granular details, but there could be something to it that's really, really important. I just don't know right now.
Hey friends, if you'd like to stay connected and reinforce the valuable insights from this show, let's connect on Instagram. You can find me at Simon Hill. That's at Simon Hill. I look forward to seeing you there. All right, let's dive back into the episode. I think this stuff gets more important the more kind of performance oriented your goals are.
Yeah.
But if you just look at national statistics, I think it's like 90% of Australians are not meeting the exercise recommendations.
Yeah.
So we just need to get people doing something.
Right.
And, without getting stuck in the weeds, I think most people can work towards those standard Australian recommendations. Yeah. That are coming back to 150 to 300 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity.
Yeah. Which
I think maybe one point worth adding there is a very slow walk probably doesn't count.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a slow walk depends.
Again, it's going to depend on your baseline fitness.
Exactly.
Right, because it is relative.
Exactly.
A slow walk for us might be zone 2 for someone.
Correct. Yes.
I guess what I'm saying is if you're going for that slow walk, whatever that is for you, and your heart rate is not at 60 to 70% of your max,
doesn't count.
Then you're in zone 1. Right. You're not puffy at all.
Right.
You can carry out that conversation with absolute ease.
Yeah, I would not consider that as part of your weekly exercise or physical activity. It has to be somewhat strenuous above baseline. I think that what you're saying there is just called being a human being and living in this world. Like, you're going to walk around, you're going to walk from A to B, and you should be able to just do that at a low heart rate. That is just being a person. This is more structured. So this whole conversation is around exercise, the word exercise, which is structured exercise, right? But the guidelines, physical activity doesn't have to be structured. This is kind of the beautiful thing about it. You don't have to have reps and sets. You don't have to have target heart rate zones. You don't have to have a modality. It can be anything.
You can go and play padel.
Padel. Emphasize the L. Paddle?
Well,
padel.
I've been told to pronounce it correctly.
Okay, padel. Yeah, but mate, going back to pronunciations,
padel is
I've heard you pronounce cockinos extremely incorrectly. So I'm not going to listen to your recommendations.
It's all a work in progress. Pronunciation is...
Wait, it wasn't even cockinos. What was the word?
Drew,
don't say it.
In life,
it's...
It's always good to remember that you can learn from your mistakes.
That's very true. I know. You're good at that.
That was a mistake, but it was well worth it.
Oh, it was the best laugh. Those are my favorite laughs. The ones where you're not meant to and you shouldn't. Oh, I used to get kicked out of like school assembly all the time for laughing. And I just remember like in the moment thinking, don't laugh, but God, this feels good. And that was one of the best laughs I've had ever. Like, we held it together and I wish we didn't. I wish we just let it out.
Don't worry, we'll experience that again soon.
That's
I'm sure.
True. I reckon on our retreats there'll be some proper laughs.
Yeah, I hope so.
I think so.
I think we did it, dude. Is there anything else that we need to add?
No, I think we did a pretty good job at covering a lot of what you guys spoke about in your episode. I'm pretty happy with that. I mean, the usual flow of our pods, we bring in news of the week and good news and get it off your chest and stuff. But I think
we're recording again in 2 days?
We'll do it then.
We'll do that then.
We'll save it.
I
I've got so much I want to get off my chest.
I brought one joke in at least.
Yeah, true. Dad joke of the week. That's the new segment.
Yeah.
That can be yours. You own that. Dad joke of the week. Have you got another one?
I think I might have.
He's digging into his phone.
I think I might have another one.
He's digging in.
Yeah, I sent this to someone. A couple of days ago.
Go on.
This is a proper dad joke.
Okay, let me hear it.
You sure you want it?
Oh, mate, I love your jokes. Let's hear it.
This is such a dad joke, but maybe we can leave people with this.
Okay.
I finally decided to sell my vacuum cleaner. All it was doing was gathering dust.
No, I don't approve, mate. I'm sorry. This is like a coffee table dad joke book. Actually, that's what I'm getting you for your birthday. Oh, mate.
Okay, that's a challenge for a couple of days' time. Bring better jokes.
Bring some good jokes. And bring something you want to get off your chest. You got something? Anything that...
Good news of the week. Get something off your chest.
Is there anything you want to... You seem so happy.
Jokes. I'm really happy.
You are really happy.
Yeah.
I'm happy too, but...
You know what? I haven't done any sort of debunking videos or debates.
Dude, how much better do you feel?
I feel amazing.
Oh.
There's something just really negative about waking up and in the morning going, who am I going to take down today?
Oh.
It is just such a negative place to be.
Right. And there's so many content creators though that do that. Like that is a new genre of social media. I'm sure you follow many accounts, but...
I do, but the thing that I think about this quite a lot is that a lot of those accounts, and I've mind you, I've kind of found myself caught up in this here and there, not a lot, but a lot of those accounts are preaching about health span and longevity, yet every day is about taking other people down.
Right.
Even if you absolutely hate the information that someone else is putting out there, that can't be healthy for your own health span.
No. And it's not like they just woke up in the morning, went for a walk with their dog and then just pulled out the camera and hit go. Like they're researching this.
Yeah.
Like there's hours off camera where they're researching the claim made, getting studies you've done it. Yours are great. By the way,
I've done it,
your takedowns are different. Let's be honest.
You're
gentle.
You still have
respectful.
to get into a little bit of a negative mindset. The frustration kind of ensues.
Right.
I just want to do my zone 2. I want to do my zone
dad
5.
Jokes. I just want to tell dad
jokes. I want to research, speak to people and put out information.
Right.
And, people can take what they want from that.
Right. And also, if you think about it, to get enough content to take people down means your algorithm has to be feeding you videos that are kind of pissing you off on a daily basis, and you just video after video of just this quackery and bullshit that you're seeing on social media. Even that's not good for you. Like in the research of the takedown, even if it's educational, like I'm sure there are some guys who are creating content that is very helpful, but they have to put in hours of watching this shit. No thanks. It's not for me. I cannot do that. Sometimes I think about doing it for diabetes because there's so much bullshit out there. Like claims about diabetes and what you should and shouldn't do and what causes it. And this food's terrible and look at my CGM. By the way, did we just do a whole episode without talking about CGMs?
No, because you just brought it up.
Well, what we did do...
we nearly got there.
We just did a whole episode without talking about Collingwood Football Club.
No, we didn't.
I just brought it up. They're in the finals.
What a game last night.
Did anyone watch it? What percentage of your audience watched that game?
Percentage of Australians, I'd say
2%.
Fairly high percentage. Tuning in. Collingwood have the most members. Most people want to watch them.
That's true.
Best team to watch.
Yeah. I could just watch their fans. They're wild.
Yeah.
Wild. Sydney lost. Wasn't great. Did you watch last night?
I watched it, yeah. Carlton. We're losing listeners at a rapid pace right now.
I think they're already gone. How long we were going?
Is anyone here?
Oh, gosh. No, mate, that was fun. I enjoyed that. It's so good to be back on the mic.
There was something else I wanted to add.
Let's do it. Let's get into it.
I've forgotten.
We had a run sheet.
I'll bring it to the next episode.
Okay. I'm just
2 days' time.
All right. Yeah, I also had a couple things, but you know what? Doesn't feel right for today.
Well, let's just wrap it up there.
Okay, I'm happy with that. That was awesome. I'm just Glad to have you back in Bondi, mate.
Appreciate you, dude.
Definitely missed you over there. I was just watching you doing your podcast tour of the world. Went to some epic places. What was the highlight?
LA. I was in Sacramento.
Yeah.
I went on Mark Bell's podcast there.
I haven't even spoken to you about that yet.
Yeah.
I haven't watched the episode.
Oh, yeah.
Should I watch it?
You can watch that, and then
Okay.
maybe we chat about it in a couple of days.
Okay, cool.
That was fun. I spent time in Boston. I went to Whoop's head office. I did
Nice.
a DEXA scan.
Yep.
Had a look at my visceral fat.
Yep.
Very happy with that.
Yeah.
0.1 pounds.
That's
so
amazing.
basically 0,
Wow.
which he said was pretty unheard of. He actually said he sees a lot of lean dudes come in,
Yes.
and you look at them and you think they'll have no visceral fat,
Right.
and they have quite a lot.
Interesting.
And I mean, that goes to show it's not just excessive overall body fat that can increase visceral fat, but also the constituents of your diet can.
Mhm.
And I've spoken to Richard Johnson about this previously,
Right.
about different trials showing if you, even in a eukcaloric context, so you have weight maintenance in these interventions, if you have one group getting more calories from saturated fat and the other group getting more from polyunsaturated fats, that group that eats more saturated fats develops more liver fat.
Independent of weight loss.
Independent of weight.
calories.
This is in eukcaloric
Wow.
conditions.
Yeah.
So that's super interesting. So I think for me that was kind of reassuring
Oh,
that
absolutely.
the way that I'm eating
It's amazing.
is not increasing
So
visceral
let me ask
fat.
you a question. If you did that DEXA and it came back and said, Simon, unfortunately, your visceral fat is quite excessive, what would you change in your diet? Would you change your diet? Like, how would that influence your decision-making going forward? Because you're currently eating the diet that you believe is the healthiest. And thankfully, your DEXA showed that it actually is giving you some great results. But this is more of like a moral, philosophical question.
Well, I'd be in a tough position because the research shows unsaturated fats, particularly polyunsaturated fats, are significantly better than saturated fats from a liver fat point of view.
Yeah.
So if I had a lot of liver fat or visceral fat in a diet where I have very low saturated fat, I'm now in a hard position because I don't have a lot to change there.
Right.
I also am not overweight and don't have excessive body weight,
Right.
because that would be one of the other levers you have to pull is just lose weight.
Right. Which
Right.
you can't lean on that because you don't have the weight to lose.
So I don't have that. So to be honest, if I had have done that and came back with a lot of visceral fat, I would have been pretty worried.
Right.
And I would have really had to dig deep into the literature and call a lot of people to try and work out what was going on.
And like, what could you even do? Yeah, exactly. I wonder if there's like exercise interventions. Instead of changing your diet, could it be that you need to do different types of exercise or hit different, I don't know, intensities of your workouts, or maybe it's doing more zone 2 or whatever it is. But like, it would be interesting to see if there are non-dietary interventions that can impact your visceral fat. That's something that I think I'd like to look at.
Yeah, let's look that up. I'm
you know
not
what I
sure
mean?
I've ever seen that.
Yeah. I wonder if like,
Independent of weight loss.
independent of weight loss, like is moderate intensity aerobic, steady state training better for burning visceral fat than high intensity training or resistance training? I wonder.
There are other things that influence visceral fat accumulation, like hormones. So maybe I would have done a deeper dive into looking at different hormone levels through my body.
Or even the stuff we spoke about before.
Sleep deprivation.
But I was talking about like the ethnicity part of the conversation, where certain ethnic groups have a tendency to store more visceral fat
at a lower
BMI.
body weight.
Yeah,
right.
lower.
And Roy Taylor just did a study on that. I think we were going to save that for the next episode.
Let's save it.
So we'll talk about that in the next episode. But he just recently looked at 5 out of 6 people that develop type 2 diabetes have a BMI above 27. So they're considered overweight or obese. But 1 out of 6 have a BMI of below 27. And there have been a bunch of studies from Roy Taylor looking at people with a BMI above 27. And if these people lose enough body weight, as about 10 to 15% of their total body weight, can you get the fat in the liver and the pancreas down enough such that their blood glucose returns to that of a normal person without diabetes, without needing to take medications? And they see that for the majority of people, providing you haven't had type 2 diabetes for a very long time and you still have some pancreatic function, that the majority of people can go into remission,
right,
with about 10 to 15% of body weight loss. But it has been thought that for the 1 out of 6 persons who develop type 2 diabetes at what we'd say is a normal BMI, that it must not be related to visceral fat. It must be...
No, you mean subcutaneous fat, that it must be related to visceral.
No, that for these people, it was thought that there must be another etiology or cause of type 2 diabetes, right? Because their BMIs, what we would say, is quite low. They can't have a whole lot of visceral fat.
Right.
So it must be something else that's causing type 2 diabetes in this subset of people who are normal body weight but develop type 2 diabetes. Yeah. And they ran a clinical trial to look specifically at that. So we'll go into that the next episode. But, I guess to answer your question, had I had a lot of visceral fat?
Yeah.
I mean, the first thing is I would never ignore something like that.
Right.
So I would have looked at it. I understand that visceral fat is metabolically very damaging.
Yeah.
And I would want to be understanding what's causing that. Is it hormonal? Is it diet? Have I missed something in the literature?
Right.
Is it hormonal? Is it genetic? Is it to do with sleep? All of these things. And I would have tried to have as many conversations as possible with experts in that area.
Yeah. See, it's a scary position to be in when you feel like you're doing everything right and then you get a result that's like, hold on a second, this shouldn't be, obviously this is not what happened to you, but I reckon this does happen to people who feel like they're doing everything right. They're trying so fucking hard. They're eating the way they're meant to and they're moving their body and they're getting these like bad cards dealt, essentially, like bad blood test results, or maybe a scan or an MRI or a DEXA that shows that there is organ issues and fat accumulating where it shouldn't. It's hard. There's not always going to be an answer. And you're not always guaranteed that the protocols and the interventions you're doing are going to work for everyone. Like there's responders, non-responders, it's a bell curve. So luckily for you, you didn't have to cross that.
It's a bell curve, and what we see is often the average.
Yeah.
It pretty much always is. We're looking at the mean, the average result. And so customization and personalization is always going to be needed. I think I've even become just more open to the idea that people really need to customize and personalize their diet, perhaps more so than I appreciated. And in my book, I write about plant predominant dietary pattern and sort of aiming to be as plant exclusive as possible. Particularly when you consider the environment and animal welfare. But I think I've loosened up a little bit over the years in terms of, I think plant predominant for sure, but more and more when I consider genetics and different lifestyles, more and more I think that there's a lot of personalization that can be done within that theme. And, as long as you're still ticking those big boxes off, so it's low saturated fat, it's high fiber, you're getting a good amount of plant protein, and you're not eating a lot of ultra processed foods, there's room to modify things and see what leaves you feeling best and what works best for your biomarkers.
So you're talking about macronutrients here, like how much fat. Like you're not saying that your plant predominant diet has to be a higher carb diet. You're saying the reason the plants are in there are not about the macros, way beyond that. And if you feel like you want to have a higher fat diet, sure, go for it. Maybe that works really well for you. Maybe it helps you to maintain a better body weight for longer or whatever it is. Stick to the principles of predominantly plants, lots of fiber. You swing the macros how you want. It might be higher fat for you, it might be higher carb for somebody else.
Yeah, I do. I think just having spoken to enough people and even speaking with scientists like Professor Christopher Gardner, who's looked at studies comparing low and high carb diets, or low fat versus high carb, high fat versus high carb, I should say, that some people will do better on different macronutrient ratios. And the social media conversation is very dogmatic in this space, but I think you can adopt a healthy low carb diet.
Oh yeah, I agree. For sure. I think that this conversation is mainly we're talking about like weight loss or weight gain here, but I think it gets even more nuanced and detailed when you're talking about like disease states. So if you have diabetes, type 1 or type 2, again, some people do better on low carb.
Right.
And I'm okay with that.
And think about if someone has had type 2 for a long time,
right,
and their pancreas,
the
they can't get the
exactly.
function back into the pancreas.
Right. Once those beta cells are gone.
Right. So you could make a very strong argument for someone who's had type 2 for 10 plus years and they can't do Roy Taylor's protocol and lose weight and get enough insulin production, then a low carb diet might be the best option for them.
It's sensible. Like, think about it this way. If you can reverse your insulin resistance and your pancreas still works, then sure, you can keep carbs in your diet. No problem. But if your pancreas has stopped working, even if you get rid of the insulin resistance, the engine isn't there to produce the insulin. So why would you put in a stimulus into your body, being carbohydrates, that requires insulin if you can't make the insulin? So I think it is sensible. I think, again, those blanket recommendations just don't work. Like, you need to look at the individual. You really got to see context matters.
That's where I was trying to get to when I was not being very articulate.
No, I think
over time I've realized that the blanket recommendations are not effective at the individual level.
Right.
And you have to listen to all this information, read the guidelines, and then personalize things. And it's not that one person's going to do best for longevity on a carnivore diet and the next person on a vegan diet. Right. I don't think our physiology is that different, but there will be some subtle changes that will leave one person feeling better than the next.
Yes.
And also maybe certain variations of that kind of theme I described will be best in terms of your biomarkers.
Yeah.
So when you actually go out and test things.
Yeah. But I think sorry. That's the leftovers of the rowing machine in my lungs from this morning's workout. I do think that the feeling good short term is not a good proxy for long-term health. So I know that there's carnivores who say they feel amazing short term, and I know there's other people eating other diets who feel so good, and I just don't think that that's good enough for a long-term sustainable diet or way of living if it's going to make you more unhealthy down the line,
Yeah, when I say feeling good, again, I'm talking about within the context of what is established as a healthy dietary pattern for longevity.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm not saying just go out and follow any random diet.
Yeah, because some people feel good eating McDonald's.
If you feel good, then that's the right diet for you.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is there's an established theme, low saturated fat, good amount of polyunsaturated fats, high fiber, features more plant protein than the average diet. It's low in ultra processed foods. Within that theme, make some changes.
Yeah, I agree.
What leaves you feeling best in terms of energy levels and cognition, memory, all these sorts of things. Yeah. And test your biomarkers and go from there.
Yeah, and be okay with self-experimenting. Like, you can be on a plant-based diet and do a little stint of a low-carb version. See how you feel. Maybe the cognition improvements are incredible and you love it. Fine. It's nice to have options. And I think that if you get it like too dogmatic, you run out of options here. And the more options, the better. Not just for us as individuals, but for everybody, because there's so many differences between people. And I've definitely changed it. I mean, this is a pendulum. It swings. Like, I was low carb keto, and then I was a high carb, very low fat, and then I'm just in the middle. And sometimes I have low carb days, sometimes high. Like, going back to what you said, I think the best framing of it is what is the foundation, and it's pretty clear what you just mentioned, all of those things: plant predominant diet, high fiber, more plant protein, blah blah blah. Within that, tweak it how you like. Have fun with it. You only get to live one life, guys.
Seed oils. That's the other thing.
What a transition.
I just realized you said CGMs we didn't speak about.
Oh, okay.
And Collingwood.
Yeah.
And then the third thing that we usually talk about is seed oils.
Is there anything you want to say about them? Actually,
I have an episode with Professor Philip Calder.
Okay.
And that will be out. Actually, that's going to be out the week before this episode. So by the time people are listening to us now, if they're still listening, because we kind of say goodbye to everyone.
Still here, guys.
If you're still with us,
someone's still listening.
Respect.
Yeah. And let us know if you made it to the end. Is this on YouTube?
it will be on
Go
YouTube.
to YouTube and just let us know in the comments.
Everyone that's still listening right now,
Yeah.
at 1 hour 30 something in,
Yeah.
20 minutes after we say goodbye to everyone,
Yeah.
go to YouTube, leave us a comment.
And just say, still here.
Still here.
That's what we want in the comment. Right, just going back to seed oils, that has to be the most trending video, or this topic. The most trending videos right now are about destroying seed oils online. Like, I'm seeing people telling you that oat milk is literally killing you, that it's higher GI than Coca-Cola and all this stuff. So I'm keen to hear what this expert says, and I'd like to hear your opinion, but I think, are we saving that for the next episode?
Let's save it.
Save it. Okay.
It's probably
It's a big one.
20 or 30 minits to unpack.
Okay.
But yeah, make sure you tune into
So
our next episode, and we'll debrief on.
You just drank if I know you, it's always a double macchiato with some kind of plant milk.
Almond milk.
So you did almond.
But I don't ask them to show me the ingredient list, or is there seed oils in there?
So, but what I was going to say is, like, you're drinking a macchiato, which literally has like a little bit of fluff on top. Like, it's not like you're drinking vast amounts of seed oil.
Don't pick on the macchiato. Man.
No, I love a macchiato. What I'm saying is, let's just.
He might be small, but he packs a big punch.
Oh, it's a beautiful coffee. Let's steel man the argument. Let's say seed oils are toxic. Do you think that the dose in a macchiato, that little bit of froth on top, is enough to cause problems?
Yes, I'm not walking out here. My legs are not going to work.
Oh, gosh. Okay. All right, mate. Look.
I'm intoxicated.
You look intoxicated. You actually look it. Okay. I love it. He's being facetious. It's a bit of it tongue-in-cheek. But
let me just say one thing. The episode with Philip Calder, it was a reminder that context matters a lot. And I do think that there may be a context, and I'm not going to give this away.
Don't give it away.
There might be a context that may apply to many of the people listening right now, actually, where you might want to reduce your exposure to certain seed oils rich in omega-6. Tucker Goodrich is going to be fist pumping right now, and Dr. Matthew Nagra is going to be thinking, where are you going with this? Yeah. I think there is a context that's worth flagging, that certain people may want to consider reducing omega-6 rich seed oils and instead cooking with olive oil or avocado oil or even canola oil, which is low in omega-6 but rich in monounsaturated fats. And it goes without saying, reducing ultra-processed foods that contain a lot of these omega-6 rich oils. I don't think it's the omega-6s in those ultra-processed foods that are inherently the problem. I think it's the entire package. But in this one particular context, there is a good argument for reducing omega-6 intake. I'll leave you with that.
You've got me hooked. You just cut a great promo. A lot of people want to know now, so you're going to have to just tune into the next episode, I guess.
That's how we do it.
It's very interesting. I like that, mate.
Leave people hanging.
So tomorrow, is it okay if I have some oat milk in my coffee?
Yeah, if you want to die.
I love it.
Speaking of leaving people hanging, one last thing.
Okay.
I've been practicing my dead hangs.
Oh, have you?
Yeah. I mean, ahead of the retreat.
Yeah, we got to.
I don't want to get shown up.
No, you don't. You don't.
So how long should I be hanging for?
Have you gotten more than a minute?
I'm practicing single arm hangs and also doubles.
Okay, the fact that you can even single arm hang.
I can single arm hang for about 10 seconds.
Is great. A lot of people cannot. And you're not a small person.
It took a little bit of practice.
You've got to be 90 kilos, right?
90 kilos.
Mate, that's great. To hang single arm, that's very good. Most people who can hang long on single arm
you a video.
Very light. So single arm, you do left and your right, similar time per arm?
My left is a little shorter.
Yep, understandably. And what's your double arm hang? Have you tested that?
I haven't looked at the max, but I hang for about a minute and it feels pretty comfortable.
Okay. Yeah, try your double arm when you're fresh next time. We did, like for Ninja Warrior, we had to do, I think it was 4 minutes. Maybe 1% of people could do 4 minutes. And these are like athletes who are...
So this is grip endurance.
Grip endurance.
As opposed to grip strength.
Correct. It depends on your body weight. If you're a very heavy person, the amount of strength that you're going to have to utilize to hang obviously 100 kilos of a bar is going to be more than someone who's got a frame of 50, right? Because often, like we just tested as well, your grip strength with the dynamometer.
Did I pass?
You passed. You're in the 97th percentile, which is extremely good for grip strength. And we didn't do the test properly. You meant to do 3 each hand with a couple minutes rest and test your left hand. But like, you're obviously strong. And I think that grip endurance is something that people don't practice enough. I think hanging in general is fantastic. Mate, we're just about to start another podcast. Here we go.
Well, that's what I've been doing, Drew.
Yeah.
So I'll do a set of whatever I'm working out.
Right.
Legs, push, pull.
And just hang.
And then in the middle, I just hang.
Brilliant. All for it. For shoulder health, for just general
Same.
grip, forearms. The forearms are looking juicy as well. Look at those. No wonder you used.
These are from hanging, guys.
Yeah, that's it. No, that's good, man. I do a lot of hanging. I mean, now you're ready for rope. You just proved to me that you're ready for rope. Are you going to come?
I did the rope once in LA, actually.
I saw.
Yeah.
It's different. Come to this rope.
I got up there relatively easy.
No, you looked good.
I didn't use legs at all.
No, you did a legless. You flew up there. I saw it. It was great. That rope's different. It's thinner. Our rope's
Okay,
special.
I'll come down.
Will you?
Is it tomorrow?
Oh my God. Guys, are you hearing this?
Is it tomorrow?
What day is it today?
Saturday.
There is a Sunday one, but we're not going to do that. We're going to do it next week. Can you do it on Monday?
The day of our podcast?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What time's our podcast? Afternoon?
I think it was 3 p.m.
Perfect. We're going to do rope midday.
Okay. So we will report back.
No, we're going to film it. I'm filming
We'll film
this.
it?
Yeah, I'm going to make a
And
post.
we'll report back.
And we're going to integrate
I'm also going to record a double arm dead hang.
for max
Double
time.
hand dead hang.
If you can do 4 minutes, I will be so impressed.
4 minutes.
Because what happens is, you're a minute in, you're like, this is easy. I'm good. I'm going to do 10 minutes. And then you just hit a wall. It happens so quick.
How much of this is mental?
Not that much. Your grip will physically give out. Like when I did Ninja, I remember, I will never forget this moment, the most vivid memory maybe of my life. I was in the semi-finals. I'm on the last obstacle. I have to get past this one and I'm on the warped wall, hit the buzzer and it's all over. I'm into the finals. I get onto this the last obstacle, whatever it was. I'm hanging from like a ring, like a metal ring, okay? And it's movable. And you hook it onto something and then you do this lache,
Yes.
right? Which
Yeah.
means you fly through the air, but you keep holding the ring and you land on another hook, okay? I made the hook, bang, got it. Made the next, got it. Now all I have to do is swing from the ring to the floor and then climb the wall and we're good. I'm into the finals.
But you lost all strength.
It's not that I lost strength. The ring started to twist, okay? So I was facing now to the right and then I was facing to the left and I need to face forward. And it was like, I couldn't stop it from swinging. So in my mind, I'm like, just calm down, wait for it to stop. You'll face the right way and then you'll go. And I'm waiting and I'm waiting and I'm waiting and I'm like, I'm about to do it. Here we go. It's slowing down, bang. And then all of a sudden, I'm in the water. And I didn't know how it happened. I never felt my grip going. It just, bang, gone. The muscles just hit so much fatigue that I just was in the water. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, I know that I could have done it. I was right there. And my grip endurance let me down. Now, I'm not saying that people need to practice their grip endurance so that they can be a ninja warrior, but like, it just shows you like 3-4 minutes is epic. If you can do that.
Come down with me and I'll walk you through a few single arm reps.
Teach me how to do this? Okay.
We can work on it.
I'm going to be eating your words on the road, my friend. Can't wait.
Good session, my friend.
Awesome, man. It's good to do it.
Appreciate you.
You too, brother.
Thanks.
We'll do this again.
There you have it, friends. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did and want to stay up to date with future episodes, be sure to hit that subscribe button on YouTube and follow on Apple or Spotify. Finally, thank you for showing up and the effort that you're making to take control of your health. I look forward to hanging out with you again in the next episode.